Hi guys. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Okay, take a deep breath with me, please. Okay, so I am beaming. It is so nice to finally be able to properly say goodbye. Goodbye, Paris. What I don't want to leave unmentioned is that I'm very grateful for Paris. And without Paris, I wouldn't be the person that I am today in many ways. Truthfully, I am also very relieved that I left Paris. I am still healing over this experience, and I know it will take some time. And I know one day I'll be perfectly fine. And also every visit I make to Paris, and it will be a lot because I have a lot of work in Paris, I get the opportunity to see the city with new eyes. And I will manage to get from I hate this city to I love this memory to why don't we visit Paris more often? And maybe some cities are better to visit than to live in. Like maybe it's better to be a guest than a host. And I still have so much love for the city. The beauty in it, like the endless beauty in it, the art, the culture, the history, the youth, the energy, the fashion. There's so many amazing things about Paris, and that's the part that I want to nurture. You know, the love I have for the city. Paris chapter closed. Berlin chapter open. I mean, this is my journal for a while now. Why Berlin? 10 years ago, I didn't even like Berlin. I thought that Hamburg is so superior, which is so funny to me now. And even though I think that Hamburg is one of the most beautiful places, I just couldn't live there at this point in my life. And it's because it makes me feel so endlessly small. However, I love to visit my hometown. And I love that it's so close to Berlin. And you know, I can get on a train and in 90 minutes I can get to see my family and friends from Hamburg. So that's a big plus. Around 4 years ago, I got to know Berlin from a new perspective. So I kept coming back. And the thing that struck me about Berlin was me. I believe that cities have different impacts on our being. Copenhagen, for example, inspires me. LA heals me and on rare occasions destroys me. Milan makes me laid back. London makes me anxious. Hamburg makes me small. New York makes me big. New York really challenges me. And I love that about New York. But Berlin just makes me me. I sleep well, I work out, I am social, I enjoy working, I have a great work-life balance here. And I just love to live. So we started looking for places in 2020, and a lot of other people had the same idea. So we couldn't find anything that we liked, and then we kind of put it aside. 1 year later, we decided to shoot our shot in New York, and then this idea was like put to the very, very back of this drawer over there. You see that? And then last year, and again, this is like this weird divine timing. 1 week before the robbery, I didn't know where to go. And it was August, and I had like free time, holidays, and we randomly ended up deciding for Berlin. So I spent a week here in Berlin, and it was one of the best weeks I've ever had in summer, like ever. I was genuinely so happy, so fulfilled, and I even made a post about this. Like, it was as if the universe was saying, listen, something bad is gonna happen very soon, but I'm looking out for you. I have the perfect place for you in store, and I want you to remember this. And to be honest, I don't know if my decision would have been as clear if I hadn't had that week in Berlin before. So, day of the robbery, I immediately knew I'm gonna move to Berlin. I did remember. However, I also started trauma therapy, and my therapist said to not make any big life decisions within the first few months after a traumatic experience. So I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and then in October, I just knew. Berlin in Europe or nowhere. For me, there was no real alternative. Like, I briefly flirted with the idea of Milan, but then no. And then I started to seriously look for places. Okay, so apartment hunting was a whole task in itself. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I really, really wanted a loft apartment with exposed bricks and high ceilings. And actually, Berlin has quite a lot of these, they're just really hard to find. And I'm also not the only person who likes this type of spaces, so it was really tricky. And then I remember one night during Paris Fashion Week, I couldn't sleep, so I was online, I was browsing apartments, and then I saw it. I saw an apartment that I absolutely loved. It was a loft apartment. Loft apartment. And, you know, we arranged a visit, we went there, we met the owner, he was great, everything was perfect. perfect. The owner liked us back and we agreed to get this place. It was almost too good to be true. I only had a very slight concern, two small security concerns. Number one being that the closet would have been right in front of the entrance. And number two, that it had 2 doors. So there were 2 ways of entering this apartment. And I, after what happened in Paris, I was like, it's not ideal, but the rest is ideal. So then, and I just never forget this moment, I was in New York. And you know how every night I write in my diary? And I wrote in my diary, please, universe, I just never want to get robbed in my life ever again. Whatever you do, make sure I never get robbed again. And then the next morning, I kid you not, I wrote this down in the evening, the next morning, after everything was set and arranged, we get a message that the wife of the owner doesn't want us to be in that apartment, even though there was a contractual commitment. So technically we could fight it, but just knowing what I wrote in my diary the night before, I was too superstitious and I thought it is happening for a reason. I'm always deliberate in choosing whether I pursue something or not, and whether I go after what I want or whether I leave it. And I decided to leave it. Also, it was the very first apartment that we looked at, so I thought there would be more on the market. Surely there'll be more. We looked for 8 months at dozens of apartments, and there was just nothing. Nothing that I came close to considering. Okay, maybe one, but it was also not ideal. At one point, I just started looking at places that were so overpriced. I even looked at an 8 million apartment. Not because I would have bought it, but I was curious. And there was nothing showing up. So I was like, okay, let's see what the super rich are buying. And then I was getting desperate. And I even mentioned to my therapist, am I being too annoying? Am I too particular? Because it's been 8 months, it's been almost a year. Why am I like that? And when do I know when to settle for compromise versus wait for something better? And that's tricky. And then one day, my dream place showed up. And it was perfect for many, many, many reasons. Number one is the safety of this place. Another one is the space and the layout, which is just great. The whole room arrangement and the location. It's 10 out of 10. It was simply perfect. And honestly, this was another lesson why I can't trust myself. I'm so grateful that I stayed patient and that I didn't go for anything less than I wanted. So thank you, me. I think we need to, reinforce our self-trust. And when we make a decision that was good for us, we need to thank ourselves, guys. Also be more grateful for ourselves. So thank you, Xenia. Fist bump. What I love about Berlin. The number one thing I love about Berlin are the people. And you guys know I'm a people person. And being in a city where we have a lot of friends is life-changing in itself. We never had a lot of friends in Paris, and especially not close friends. And I would also say that I moved to Paris for work, so a lot of the relationships I had were work relationships. So being here and being surrounded by so many people that I love just made my soul full. If I were The Sims and I had this bar that shows my relationships, it would be super green and at 100% all the time. But it's not just the people who are my friends, it's also the Berlin crowd. I just love the crowd. It's giving New York. People are so young and so full of energy, and everybody is so unique. It's super inspiring. And that's why I always say Berlin has that New York City vibe, because the people on the streets, they give me this energy of, we're gonna change the world for the better. I love Berlin for the internationality. I'm very happy to be German for many reasons, but there's nothing I love more than being German in Germany, in a city where everybody speaks English. If you go to a coffee place or a restaurant, you have to order in English. If you walk by people on the streets, everybody's speaking English. It literally feels more international than Paris, and I love it so much. It's a fact that diversity is crucial for a functioning and healthy society. And I love all the different influences from different cultures and different nationalities and different people. And I love the anonymity. I forgot how to English. Sorry, guys. Anonymity. But I'm a German. It's okay that I forget how to English.
Anonymity.
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 Okay, I love the anonymity. Berlin is the opposite of Hamburg or Munich. These two cities are giving the same vibe when it comes to this. And you walk into a place or restaurant, everybody's looking at you. Like everybody's looking at you, everybody's staring, everybody's so openly judging. And they're just like staring and I feel so vulnerable. Like I feel like I'm naked. Like why are all these people looking at me? And it's just not just me, you know, like a lot of friends who don't have a social media presence, they have the same experience. And here in Berlin, everybody's minding their own business and I love it. Like I never forget, I was walking through this park and I saw so many people doing random things. Like one person was dancing to nature, the other person was building huts or something, one person was knitting, the other one was singing something funny. And I looked around and like nobody was watching, like except me, because I was like, why is nobody watching? Like this is weird, like I'm in a fever dream. Why is nobody watching? Nobody cares. I love it. I love unbothered people. Okay, next point is food. So I know that Paris has amazing food, but just very few restaurants for vegetarians. So actually one of my least favorite things about Paris was the vegetarian offer. Like when I went to a place, I mostly ordered French fries and like a salad, but like not a mixed salad, but just like a head of a salad. So coming from Paris to Berlin, and Berlin has been a leader for like vegan and vegetarian food for like decades, like before it became a trend. It's literally entering heaven. I entered heaven. The vegetarian food is not only incredible, it's also affordable. Like, especially when I come from New York, I come to Berlin, I'm like, oh my God, I'm ripping the people off. Because I'm so used to like New York prices, and then I get here and I'm like, I feel like, not bad, but it's a thing that I love about Berlin. But my favorite thing is the vibe of the restaurants. Again, also this has such a New York energy. You know, the waiters are so cool and the crowd is inspiring and people are so unique, and I just love seeing like different people with different lives melting together in one pot. Okay, the next point is walking. I'm a walker. You can call me Xenia Walker. I walk everywhere all the time. And I love New York for its wide sidewalks, but the sidewalks in Berlin are even wider. They're just huge. And you know, a sidewalk is not just a sidewalk. Like there's a whole art to it. Like you need to look up like sidewalk design or like walking designs in urban cities. And I give you an example. So Hamburg is a city where you could technically walk. It's a walkable city, but it's not super nice to walk. Like the way the walking paths are designed, it's not like super nice. I mean, there are a few areas where it's okay, but like I need a car in Hamburg. Paris has beautiful routes, but the sidewalks are literally tiny and are very overpacked. And in Berlin, especially the areas that I love, the sidewalks are so big. And the best part is, there was this rule in Berlin where, you know, when you build like a house or like an apartment complex, the ground floor needs to be a restaurant. So you walk through so many restaurants everywhere. You can people watch perfectly. You always run into friends. And I am in walking heaven, guys. I cannot say it differently. I'm literally in walking heaven. I just love walking here. Oh, it's my favorite thing in the world. And I think that's why New York and Berlin are my favorite cities, because I can really experience them by foot and I can take the city in on my two legs. Okay, the other reason is the startup culture. I love that Berlin has a very vibrant startup culture and it's like compressed in like a very small area, you know, like it's this one area where there's like all startups, all entrepreneurs, and I love that energy. Even though I only dipped in like with half my toe, I love that vibrant energy already because it's like buzzing with possibility. I love that. And you know, when you go to a coffee place in this area, you hear people talk about their startup and their ideas and their businesses. And once I was in a coffee and I overheard somebody introduce himself as his friend's fundraising therapist. And I was like, wow, this is so Berlin. This guy was actually from New York, but I thought it's funny. Very Berlin coded. Okay, and then the quality of life, especially for the amount that you pay. Like I know that Berlin has exploded over the last few years. It used to be a very affordable place, and now it's one of the most expensive cities in Germany, but still like one of the cheaper cities in Europe. Especially if you compare it to like Paris or London. These cities have become so expensive and so unaffordable that the gap became very big. And whenever the gap is really, really big, it's bad for society. And I think that's also why the crime has exploded in London and Paris, because there's people who have nothing to lose. Like they're willing to do anything because they have nothing to lose. And it is a sign of a very unhealthy society as a whole. And like Berlin is such a mixed city. Like sure, you have places where there's like a lot of wealth, but generally, and especially the parts that I love, they're so mixed. You have everything. Yeah, like you have restaurants for every price. You have like there's such a mix of expensive and cheap and like nice and low-key, and I feel like you can also live so many different lives in Berlin, like depending on what you look for, like what stage you are in your life. I feel like Berlin, it's a very big city, right? And usually I don't like big cities, like when they're too big. Obviously, like for example, New York, everything is happening on such a like small area for me that the city feels very small. Same with Paris, by the way. Paris feels small because everything is happening in like a very like small circle. And in Berlin itself is huge, but it feels like there's 7 cities next to each other. Like that's what it feels like. Like 7 villages next to each other, and I love like 2 villages, and so my life is happening in these 2 villages. And again, I think for the amount of money you spend, you can have a great life here. And you just get value, you know? Also, I have witnessed so many wholesome moments in Berlin. Like I'm walking through the streets and I'm like, people are so wholesome. Like every single day I walk and I witness cute little moments and I'm like, oh my god, humans are so cute. Also, you see so many like families here. I love it. I also love that people are very like uniquely themselves and they're so creative being themselves. Like people are just creative and I love creative energy. I also asked Jürgen, because you know guys, I'm sorry that Jürgen is not here right now. He's a busy man. But I asked him, I'm like, what do you love about Berlin? You know, you guys are always like, but what about Jürgen? I'm like, you know, I ask him. So Jürgen also loves the walking because we're both walkers. It's Xenia and Jürgen Walker. So he said the restaurant culture, but also the coffee culture. I actually forgot to mention this. The coffee culture here is huge. Like it's major. And so many good coffee places. Oh my God, I'm in coffee heaven. And he said there's this lightness and the individuality of people. There's no judgment, international community, expats, lots of expats. And you know, actually the one thing I forgot to mention, but like there's so many international people, but it never feels touristy. Like it never feels like, I mean, of course, if you go to like the touristy places, it will feel touristy, but like Berlin Center, it feels like a lot of international people who call Berlin their home. Then Jürgen mentioned the history, of course. I think, and that's something that's so magical about Berlin, like it has a very ugly history, but there's also a lot of like rich history in terms of like history was written here. I don't want to like emphasize the bad stuff that happened here. A lot of things have happened here. And actually I want to like make one of these tours, actually a touristy tour where they walk you through all the like historically important places in Berlin, because I want to learn everything about the city. I think the energy is it's such a special energy. Jürgen said the direct flight to New York. Fair. You have direct flights every day. And then he said also this like young people energy. And you know, actually when I talk about this, or when we talk about this, it's not that we are like, ooh, it's so many young people and we just love young people. No, it's like even the people who are like our age or older, they also have this like young, vibrant energy. And that's cool. I love that. More energy, more passion. Okay, I wrote something down because I just have to get it off my chest. One thing that really amuses me is that people sometimes get offended by my opinion when I say that I don't like certain places. And guys, it's not personal, okay? I mean, it is personal. And that's exactly why it doesn't really matter how my experience is if your experience is different. But I always wonder why people give so much importance to like my opinion. And like, for example, it's not really a secret that I don't love London. Like I love the UK, but I don't like love London. It's something energetically at this point in my life and like for the last years when I was in London. And I'm sure you can have great experiences in London, and I know there are like people who live the best lives in London and have the greatest experiences in London. But like I never feel triggered when people say how much they love London, because I understand it. And I also don't get triggered when people say, oh, I hate New York. Like that's that's cool. Like, that can be your experience. I also remember, sometimes I would come to New York and I would have a shitty time. Like, I know what it's like to go to the city and not have a good time. So if I wouldn't come back to New York and this would be like my only reference point, then this would be my opinion about the city. So again, like, loving or not loving certain cities is such an individual thing. And I also think there are people who can thrive anywhere. And also, like, if I had to move to London, let's say for work, I would find a way to thrive. Like, no doubts about that. And also perceptions change and shift all the time. Like, look at me not loving Berlin 10 years ago and now feeling so home here. Like, thank God I changed my opinion and my perception. I think that you guys can tell from my energy that I'm a highly sensitive person, okay? And I sense a lot of things from like under the surface. And maybe I cannot name it, but it's a feeling. And that's why my environment is very crucial to me. And I think if you watch my YouTube videos, you can also see like where my energy is, like, you can feel my energy. I think you can feel it through the screen. And that's also why, like, you can feel that New York makes me so happy and how much I love New York, but you can also feel that it's challenging me, it's both. And in this environment where I am right now, I think there's a lot of very positive energy for me. And I am so grateful that Berlin exists. Like, every single day, I thank God that Berlin exists. Because one topic that I had over the last years, like, that I kept thinking about, because, I'm getting older, like, soon I have to, like, settle-ish, like, when I want to have a family, etc. And I was always so worried because I was like, I cannot settle in New York, like, unless I'm a billionaire. I will never settle in Paris. I mean, that's what I said and thought. So I was like, oh my God, where am I going to settle? Like, what am I going to do? And it really stressed me out not knowing where I will settle down in the future. And then suddenly Berlin showed up. Hi. I have such an immense gratitude for this place. Like, thank you, Berlin. Like, thank you for existing. And then again, who knows? I love that we don't know what life has in store for us, because the things that we lose lead us to better things. If we let them, if we stay open-minded, and if we carry the right attitude. And maybe in a few years I would change my opinion. You never know with me. I gotta keep you on your toes, don't I? Alright guys, thank you for listening. Cannot wait to show you my favorite spots here, and I see you next week.